Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida, in the Xtreme Studios. I have from Central Florida, the young 20-something Professor Pixel joining me tonight as we review Season 2 Columbo, the great TV show from the late 60s, early 70s, and some would even say 90s and 80s. Pixel. So that's something we'll get to eventually here on the Xtreme Movie Show. But tonight, what we're doing is we've reviewed every individual episode of not only Season 1 and reviewed those, but all of Season 2. And now what we're doing with Season 2 is going back and we're ranking all episodes in order from worst to first. In other words, from 8 to number 1 of Columbo. And I think when we did this last time, Pixel, we had a lot of interesting feedback from people. I was really surprised at how wonderful this show has turned out to be, because it's a first watch for both of us. And for some of the newer people that have recently joined the Xtreme Movie Show, I want to say thanks for that. Thanks for voting in any polls that RDV and other people have put up here on the channel. I also want to send, while you're here, Pixel, a note out, because we had one particular fan who was really interested in some of our other TV shows that we review, like, for example, Forever Night, which we are working our way through Season 1 right now, but also to a website that normally I don't give any pop to on here, and that would be the Columbo Files log. That's a website that you can go to, the Columbo File blog specifically, that has a lot of these episodes written up, and it's well written and it's nice, and it's a great thing without getting too crazy about it. That just reminds me of how fun a TV show can be, and I think Columbo's that way. And I just never given in the 5 years we've been doing this any attention to a website, but I think they've done a great job, and their people seem very positive about the show. And I have to sit there and say, now, through 2 seasons in, Pixel, I can definitely feel like, because we got some fun and maybe not as fun episodes to talk about here too. So let's just start off the bat. We'll start with you first. Out of Season 2 in Columbo, your worst episode so far, and by all means, if there's any generic comments you want to make before diving right in, please feel free to do so.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to start with the second episode of Season 2 for my worst episode of this season, and that was The Greenhouse Jungle. When we went through this one, this is one that I accidentally went through twice because I tried to watch while I was away for a weekend. So I went on Tubi. I didn't have access to the Peacock. So I went to Season 2, Episode 1, and on Tubi, they have The Greenhouse Jungle. They do not have Etude in Black or Too Black. So I watched that entire episode, and I was like, "This is not a great start to the season. This isn't going very well." And once I got to the end and I looked it up, I only then realized, "Oh, this isn't the right episode."
Right. But
Episode,
that's not why you didn't like it. You didn't like it because...
No, why I don't like it is because it's honestly just weak on all levels. Our main villain, which was Milland, my bad, as Jarvis, an uncle who kills his nephew and tries to make his wife just a little fool. It's really just boring and infuriating, and I want to like it more, but I'm just not sold by the end of it. Once we get to the end, you're just glad it's over.
Okay.
And this also had that annoying detective on the side that was helping the lieutenant solve this case.
Yeah, definitely one of the things we pointed out early on in Season 2, how there were some changes to some of the things we called Columbo, and as they try to TV-fy it more a bit. I would agree with you on that. It's not quite my worst, but it's close. So I've got to mention that too. And just as people in probably now want to sit there and say these aren't necessarily what we think are our favorite episodes or the worst. It's kind of hard as a combination. They're just relative to each other for Season 2 only. Right now, we have not combined Season 1 and Season 2 rankings at all. Kind of in the same way you felt about this episode, I think I have more positive things to say about my worst episode of Season 2 Columbo. And the reason why it's the worst for me is because while there's a lot of great components to this and pieces, they just don't really seem to play well together. And that, of course, would be the world's most dangerous match, as I like to throw that on a little Ken Shamrock for some of you guys. This is the psychedelic opening chess one, which I like, and I think there's a lot of very interesting ideas in here. I think one of the things about Columbo is we could easily do a ranking of best final acts, right? Like the gotcha scenes, or the best villains, let's say, or those kinds of situations. For me, this one had a lot going for it, and it's intriguing, but it's frustrating to watch because even though you have a professional chess player and he plays it a totally different way, which I appreciate, and the fact that I think he's got the hearing aid in it too, and while it's very pertinent to the outcome of the episode, for some reason I just found just slugs of this episode just kind of there, like it was just slow or something. I mean, it doesn't help that they had the dog in here, and I'm a big dog lover. I just really am triggered by the fact they tried forcing that in here, and I don't know why. It just doesn't work. The chess scene where they're at the table where they're playing chess with the pieces and all that and everything is kind of cool. There's a lot of things to it. I think they do chess a solid here and really give it the props chess as a sport, whatever you want to call it, deserves here. But I just didn't like it, and honestly, one of the ending is probably one of the weakest to me. So to me, it's definitely my worst on that. So for me, the worst episode of season 2, Columbo, was World's Most Dangerous Match, and for you, it was Greenhouse Jungle, correct?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so if that's not the worst, or that was the worst, what's the next worst one that you have? You're number 7.
So my next one, the name also features the most. This is the most crucial game. We have the reappearance of Robert Culp as a new villain in an ice cream truck. And he basically plots to kills the heir to this sports fortune, running the team, and he handles day-to-day operations,
general manager or whatever. Yep.
Yeah, he's the general manager. He has all of it under control, but he can't stand that he works for this man-child. So what does he do? He kills him. And this episode, the worst part about it, and this almost made it to the worst of the list. Why? Because I remembered what episode this was. This is the episode that we cannot possibly solve. While we get to go ahead and see the murder, we don't see what Columbo uses at the end to go ahead and catch him. He doesn't even fake evidence to go ahead and catch him. The item at the end just allows him to go ahead and say, "Oh, this is you. Goodbye." And I couldn't forgive that, because I was going through our last, our final thoughts of an episode that we go through each week, and I saw myself and how upset I was at the end of this one, and I was like, no, that I can't forgive this in a Columbo episode.
It's interesting you say that, because I always say contact lens just to remind everybody that there's some weird ones, but then we talk about suitable framing with the gloves, and we're like, oh, that was so good. But to me, I'll only agree with you about the plot hole thing, but after 2, and I should say not but in addition to now having a second season under my belt, looking forward to the third one to review here on the Xtreme Movie Show, is that I think that's just standard for Columbo. It's just a question of, for the most part, how bad that clue part is going to be that we either can or can't. Because I would agree with you on this part about being able to solve it. That being said,
I remember what it was. It was the tape, because he was recording
the reel to reel. Yes,
that's right. And we had no idea that was there. We had no idea his phone was bugged.
Well, yeah, I'll have more to say about this later this hour as we get to that. Definitely feel totally different about this episode than you do. Interesting that you say that, because I think when we talk about episodes and we talk about them, for me, generally, there is somewhat of a correlation between how good of the villain is, however I describe that, versus how well the episode is. You might say this episode has fallen pretty far, especially if you're a falling star, because that would be my episode 7, and that would be Requiem for a Falling Star. I really enjoyed the women in Columbo and how they've all brought something different to it. It's not bad. And this is the one where you've got the actress who's getting blackmailed and blah, blah, blah. She lives on the, I forget the size of it, like a half acre maybe of land that's in the middle of where she does her filming and all that. She does great. There's some interesting things being to it. She manipulates her assistant really well. But it's just, when I think of an episode, I go, yeah, I don't really remember much about it. It's just very forgettable to me. And I think good, bad, or otherwise, you can't have that. I love watching it when they do the 70s style, and we talk about it during the show. There's usually, if there's a food thing in there, the episode seems to be better. If there's some really cool kind of sexy 70s outfits or places to it, that's kind of cool too. But like you, kind of like not being able to really put a lot of things together with the fountain at the very end was somewhat weak too. But I don't hate this episode. I'm not going to say it's boring. It's just sort of there to me. It just, the Most Dangerous Match to me was the worst because it had a lot going for potential, and I could totally understand why somebody thought, oh, that worked for them on all those levels. But this one just felt kind of limp going into me. So for number 7, it's Requiem for a Falling Star.
It's funny that you go ahead and bring up the Most Dangerous Match because that segues me exactly into my number 6.
Okay.
While the psychedelic drug trip of this chess player wanting to destroy his opponent, leading him to push him down a trash compactor, while all that is there, there's obviously flaws. One, in the psychedelic part. 2, it's just not as engaging as many of the other episodes. I'll admit that Robert Culp in the Most Dangerous Game, or Most Crucial Game, my bad, he's very entertaining. And a lot of the side characters are in that too. But when it came to the Most Dangerous Match, at least all the elements were presented. I liked our victim. He was very enjoyable for this time there. He also is one of the latest deaths within the show, because when they find him, he's still alive. It comes down to the end of this episode that I can go ahead and say that this one is above the Most Crucial Game because I have seen everything they're presenting. I didn't think about his earpiece because that's the most crucial moment when he goes ahead and you realize he didn't have his hearing aid on. So he didn't realize the machine stopped. We didn't realize that either. But that evidence was presented to us, and that's part of that key. So that's why it's sitting at 6 for me.
Yeah, for number 6 to me, what's interesting is, like, we mentioned them trying to do some additional things. And I mentioned Dog was a basset hound or whatever, and yes, Dog is technically part of a reveal of one of the episodes, right? I mean, let's be honest. Going up the stairs, got to stop him, But for me, number 6 is something you mentioned earlier, and that's having a dim-witted, maybe not dim-wit's not the right word, but just having a number 2 to talk and play off of. And for me, the number 6 is what you had already mentioned, Greenhouse Jungle. I don't want to assume that every guy is going to be an incredible bad dude. I know you have to have a variety of them, and there's plenty of bad girls, and they can be young and be old. But we said for the most part, Columbo seems to be dealing in white collar type criminals and those sorts of things. Here we've got Ray Milland is supposedly the bad guy, but the sheer stupidity of some of these things, like the really, really bad, and I don't know when it started, but the whole pantyhose over the head thing is your disguise, and dumb people. It's just like a joke. And then Columbo was like, wait a minute, any of these side people, even though they've been different, has not worked for me, except for maybe one, which we'll talk about a little bit later as the show goes on too. But I think this was the episode. Was this the one where he runs down the hill
Yes. Oh my God. How could we forget?
Yeah,
Yes, he does.
because that, like I mentioned when we talked about this episode, that's something that just kind of stands out to you because it's kind of like a one take, and it definitely is him. And regardless if they dubbed some sound in there or padded his jackets, if he did fall on purpose, I really don't know. But here's the whole thing: it's just the older guy in the solarium with orchids is best left to movies like The Big Sleep, which we'll be covering later tonight here on the Xtreme Movie Show with Humphrey Bogart from 1946, and of course Lauren Bacall and RDB from the Great Midwest will be joining us to review that spectacular Howard Hawks film. Here, I just thought, okay, it could be a little bit more of this and that, and no, it just was a location. And I like it when you make a location a character in a sense that it has importance to it. So there's some pluses to this episodes, but kind of similar to what I was talking about with Requiem for a Falling Star. There's just gaps in here where it's just sort of there, and I felt like the effort's just not into it. And for the standard I'd gotten used to for 2 seasons now, it's lacking in merit. So before we go into our 5th episode, I just want to sit there and say that, the people joining in, we're reviewing from worst to first, season 2 Columbo episodes, and then we're going to review them all here at the very end, just as a quick list too, and see what people have for theirs. So this brings us, we've already done number 8, the worst episode, the next worst, and the third worst. So 8, 7, 6. Now we're on to number 5. So now it's your turn, Pixel. What's your 5th worst episode for season 2 of Columbo?
It's time for a Requiem for a Falling Star. I liked a lot of this episode. I loved the fountain bit, even though that's something that's only lightly alluded to. The plot twist is that Jean meant to kill the woman, her assistant, that does get killed.
That's kind of cool. I admit that. Cool. It is. It is cool.
It's a good fake out because we think that she meant to kill the man. What is he? Reporter. The famous Hollywood reporter that her assistant's been apparently dating. And we learned that he's a cad. He was absolutely just setting her up to screw over the main star of this episode.
Mm-hmm.
But as we're watching it and going through, and that twist coming at the end to realize she was the intended victim all along.
Right.
And I think that's what puts this above the others for me. That reveal at the end hits, and not to mention how, okay, well, let me get my coat, and she's takes it like a lady before they usher her off to prison.
Yeah, it's interesting because for me, standing at number 5 as we count our way down to 1 here in season 2, this episode I think is very divisive out of all the episodes that we're going to be talking about for me. And at number 5 for me in season 2 of Columbo's Dagger of the Mind, this is the one that I'd say is not really a Columbo episode. It's a goof one. This is the one in London with the actors, Honor Blockman and Richard Basehart. They do a fine job in it, and I think what they do is great, but I can't consider it a Columbo episode. So I can see where some people say this is a joke, it's BS. Let me just throw it all the way at the bottom because not treating it as a Columbo episode is enough of a sin that you could put it in the bottom position. That argument has merit to me. I thought it was fun. I thought the joke was them being where they're completely opposite of, at least for the 2 seasons we reviewed Columbo, totally different than a lot of the killers. I liked how they both kind of fell apart, had no clue what was going on with each other, let alone with reality. So it went against type. This probably to me would have been a more fun episode relative to the rest of the other Columbo seasons, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever. If this came later, once more people had seen Columbo, were well established with it, not so early on in season 2. So the placement of it we could talk about, but it's nice to see all the stuff of Columbo playing tourist over in London and whatnot too. I get it, but again, it's not really a Columbo episode, but its entertainment value, it really does bump it up above some of the slow gaps in the previous episodes I have. So for me, sitting at number 5 is Dagger of the Mind.
Huh. I have to wait a little bit to talk about that one.
Well, because we're in the top 4, which means these are the best of the half, really. So we're getting into the goods, as you were. So what do you have to say so far?
Now, well, I mean, halfway through, talking about them, I realized that maybe I don't hate these episodes. When we talk about a bad episode of Columbo, it's still better than half of what's on television.
True.
So we're still enjoying ourselves, even though we have negative things to say. And once we get to top 3, it's going to be pretty much all positive here. But for when we came to Requiem, I felt I had to stick up for a little more, especially considering my placement of it. But now we need to go to number 4, which I'm going to be explaining a lot for, because this is Etude in Black. This episode, I will admit, it's not the best. It's not. But there's so many entertaining elements to it. I don't care about the dog that's not given a name. I'll admit. But what I love is our main villain, Alex Benedict. He is just so sure of himself. He is absolutely sure that his murder is going. He'll get away with it. He kills his lover, who's just this. What was she?
His lover.
No, not his lover. What did she play in the band? He's a conductor.
I don't know if it was first chair something. I forget off the top of my head.
But anyway, she's this young, free-spirited thing who's like, well, I need you to let people know that we're together. It's not because I want to marry you, but I'm not going to live a lie, Alex. And so what does he do? He kills her to hide it from his wife. And his wife is a lovely young woman as well, but she feels down about herself, and he certainly doesn't help in that. But that end scene of this episode where Columbo shows the taping of his performance on television that was performed live, and what it was, which came down to the cummerbund, right?
Sure. The boutonniere, I guess, is technically what we're saying.
Yes. A flower.
The thing is, the boutonniere goes on your, by your heart, okay, whereas the other one would go more for the lady on her wrist, right? So this is the male version.
Corsage.
Right, so boutonniere, though, when you're wearing a jacket, as opposed to a cummerbund, which is something else. That's an article of clothing. Whatever it was you said, yeah. Boutonniere.
Okay. Anyway,
it's important because style and fashion is something I'll be talking about here in a moment.
But using that, and this man is he's sent into desperation. And that final minute and a half that he's just whispering to his wife, okay, you've got me. You'll wait for me. You gotta. He admits it to her first, while Columbo's just waiting there in the background. And that panic that you're feeling and the slight madness that comes over him, it's great.
I'll say this, standing at number 4 for season 2, Columbo for me is also Etude in Black. And I guess sit there and say I like a lot of this episode. I thought he was very good. I thought the dynamic between the women was interesting and certainly understandable. His lover, she just flat out gorgeous, and things weren't great at home, so you could almost understand him wanting to go because she reminds him of what he had before with his wife that he doesn't have now in a few ways, and that's understandable. And I thought that Janice, that was his wife's reaction, was, I'm not going to say right, but understandable. And I thought she did a very good job rather than just being, oh, woe is me, boo hoo hoo sort of thing. The only negative thing for me is the stupid dog that they threw in here. But honestly, where this gets a lot of points to me is I love the idea that it's a conductor. It's an A-lister. It's somebody that's used to performing, being on stage, to have a very big type A personality. I love it. And the fact that it's music and he's just, all pissy and during it is great. You're right. He's full of himself. I thought he did a tremendous job in here. It's also a very stylish episode in that the way he goes about killing her with the ashtray, just whacking her, is phenomenal. And then also the cover-up, which is also a key thing to these episodes, is he's like, what, he puts the big stupid glasses on, he has the pervy trench coat, and he's walking around in like broad daylight, and it's just absurd beyond all belief, but it's so engaging, and it captures you. That's tremendous to even just describe. But then this, as I think, where we probably, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I think we had a little bit of a disagreement in how we viewed it, because his lover's house friend or friend in the neighborhood, in the duplex complex, whatever you want to call it, condo, was that preteen kind of girl that Columbo talked to. And I remember thinking I had no problems with her at all, but I think that you did. Am I correct?
No. The preteen girl that he talks to is in the most crucial game.
Is that right?
That is, yes.
Are you sure?
I am very sure, because I remember she sees the ice cream truck. She sees the figure running.
Oh, you are correct. So the ice cream truck one. My bad. I'm getting mixed up. The dog throws me off, I guess. I don't really know. Anyway, we both agree that it's a very solid episode. It's in our top half so far of what we've got going into it. But yeah, this one to me felt like it was a continuation of season 1, and that you could have slid this episode into it. But as we get into our top 3 going in here, I gotta sit there and say, I'll have some very strong things about what we're going to be talking about here for my last 3, and we'll review them all. Any general comments on how you see your pattern going?
I personally don't have any comments on how my pattern's going. I guess I do kind of go ahead and choose how the episode ends over most of the episode itself in certain regards.
Like, I'm not putting as much emphasis on the clue for the reveal at the end, right? Because we've been, some of the best ones have the best, some of the best episodes have the best ones. That might be a theme. We've talked about the intensity of whoever the villain is, male or female. For me,
I have to apologize. You turned out to be right. I was mixing it up.
Were you?
Yep. I just I just went over the episode and I just saw, oh, there she is, over in Attitude in Black. Yes.
Well, again, TV at the time in the late 60s, early 70s is remarkably different than it is today. I think, I mentioned before with season 1 just how strong it is. They were like movies in a sense too, and the writing was top notch. I think generally my themes have been that for Columbo going to season 2, obviously the showrunners a little bit different as far as what they're going. So they're making sure the episodes happen, but they're not necessarily involved in doing them themselves. They're making sure the environment exists for them. And so we kind of go cold turkey whenever we do these. We don't really research anything. We don't pre-do it. We just talk off the top of our head. That's what makes us unique here. But for me, I would say so far the pattern's been the worst episodes seem to be the ones that are incomplete as far as them being put together, regardless of what those items are going to be. Like the Most Dangerous Match for me is the worst one. And Requiem for a Falling Star is just sort of there, just not done well. Maybe editing or something would have juiced it up. But we're getting into what are some of the things that we like about the best episodes that brings us into our top 3. So your third best episode in season 2 of Columbo is
Dagger of the Mind. Not one, but 2 thrilling killers. Columbo over in London. It is by far, I think it is the most enjoyable episode of this season. But it's not my favorite. It's very entertaining. I love the killers. I love the ending, how Columbo is able to just go ahead and use entrap them a little bit, but it's fine. He has the approval of Scotland Yard, so it's all good. Not 1 death, but 2, because they accidentally kill the one guy, and then they do kill the butler and make it look like he hung himself. They're absolutely diabolical.
They're idiots, though. They're not diabolical. That's just where I differ. Like, I thought it was so stupid that they she's got, what was it? I was like, oh, she killed him with the jar of whatever. It was a cream, facial cream or something like that. That was just so stupid, It was entertaining. I got to say that.
Not diabolical, but they're very, very mischievous in their manner around, actual murder. And I love it so much. I think I watched it twice by choice.
That's cool. It is an entertaining episode. honestly, personally, I don't really know anybody that's a big Columbo fan. Growing up, like my parents would tell me about how great it was, and how people really watched it. So it's interesting to show that, again, based on its own merits, how strong it's been has allowed us as just trying it out, because you've never seen it and you're young 20 something and I'm an 80s guy. So again, two generations of viewpoints going in here, I think is really, really kind of cool. So I I can't argue that. Just like I can't argue the fact that my third best episode in here is the most crucial game, because there's something about Robert Culp showing up with his mustache and an ice cream truck. This is one of the episodes I said looked like a Columbo episode, the way they shot it, filmed it, a house up in the Hollywood Hills, then LA sports team. It really feels like Los Angeles in the early 70s too. And of course, what better way than to whack somebody at the pool than some disenfranchised would-be young man that's going to end up inheriting the team by taking a block of ice and just whacking him with them, and then spraying down the water with the hose and all that. That is Columbo. That's going, hey, how can we kill somebody that looks like it's just sort of done on the spot, and then try to cover it up and then see how we do it. And I relish in that, because that's one of the things that I first thought about in season 1 with Columbo is, are they going to have a lot of clever ways to kill somebody, or is it really more in the cover up? And so that's why in my mind I've already said, okay, every episode has that structure we've talked about, right? It's got the death, it's got the cover up, it's got the entrance of Columbo in it, it's got some little weird thing that he's talking about, or eating food, or shooting pool, or having a dumb dog, or talking to a kid, or some little distraction, right? And then there's always the potential, if there's a not a love affair, but if there's a mistress or some carnal reason for the killer to have in there too. And there's just something about the most crucial game that just with Robert Culp, to see how hard he has to work and just how mean he looks. Because I'll be honest, part of what makes me rank Columbo episodes higher than others has to do with the strength, not of Columbo, because he's usually very solid, but just how strong the killer is and how good he is. These top 4 so far that we're going to be talking about, a few more, are great. The ones at the bottom are kind of forgettable in that sense. And I do like the variety of killings and killers, but Robert Culp just literally just is great in here. I just think it's tremendous. I mean, and I don't know. It works. It feels right. Again, this feels like this could have been in season 1. It's got that to it. It does not feel like a season 2 episode. Don't know how else to say it, but really, really tremendous episode all the way around it. I just like it. So it's man, this is really, really good.
Okay. Well, we're in the top 2, so everything that we think is in this area is already really great for us.
Yes.
In my top 2,
this is a tough one. Give it to me.
It's fitting because it's a double shock. No, this episode we just reviewed last week. This is so entertaining. You have Martin Landau, which we saw him all the time over in Mission Impossible, not playing 1, but 2 potential murderers and turning out to be both of them. You have Julie Newmar in here, and even though she's only in the episode for moments, she's very memorable. And the death itself, it really does hit well. It's a genuine whodunit in the episode of Columbo, and that's hard to do. So, yeah.
Death by a food mixer. It's so stupid.
Yes. Toss it into the top. Not only that, they then take the body, dress it, and slump him over his exercise bike.
There's a lot to like.
There is.
There's the fencing bit at the beginning. It's older, refined gentlemen, the prime of their lives. It's a rich house. It's got a very, very strong woman in it with a maid that's crucial to it. It's got the sunken bathtub, which, of course, rich men would go in, which, of course, is very important, because why would he have taken a bath but the tub be dry? I mean, just simple things, right? That's the beauty of it, right? I mean, it's tremendous. And like I told you, visually, and I think I said this a lot in this episode, and people could say recency bias, all that stupid stuff. I don't really care. What's memorable about it, before Columbo even comes on in the death, is it's a simple everyday thing that you could do and kill. I remember remarking to you about how I was just visibly hooked, because again, TV, even though writing is great, it's still acting, it's still visual, right? You can watch something and see what's going on, and if you just mute it and not really know about the plot, I think that makes it the strongest, because again, it's a visual medium, right? Talking and listening while you're watching throws it off. And then here we see the gloved hands, we see the shoes walking across, we see the zaps. They never show the actual murder itself, which I really appreciate it. And the splicing of the wire, something's going to happen. So like within that first minute or two, you're primed to see, okay, who's going to get it? Well, I guess it's the rich dude at home that's going to be marrying this young woman. Oh, is that a part of it? You know what? Shirley Moore looking incredible. No, it's kind of really not in a way. It's evil, it's delectable, it's a hell of a lot of fun. This is an extremely excellent episode of Columbo. I haven't even done the exercise of comparing like season 1 to season 2, right? There's so many of them. So it'd be hard because, again, I'm doing these as relative rankings too, not as cumulative. And there is just a lot to like about it. Dabney Coleman is the only time he has an assistant that I actually liked. I mentioned before, the other two have been boneheads. Dabney Coleman's working at gum like a coach on the sideline and chomping at it, and he looks like he just wants to shoot and beat somebody up. Absolutely tremendous. And it's a great episode. And again, Martin Landau, what a phenomenal actor. And I do think, and I wanted to ask you this before we talk about our number 1 best episode of season 2 of Columbo here and review it all. And we'll, of course, we'll just give the list before we do that last episode. For me, just saying to you twice now, that the performance of the bad guy, the killer, carries a lot of weight when giving a grade to the episodes. For me, I do think that, of course, Peter Falk's performance is generally between an A+ and an A-, maybe a B+. It never really is bad. I think there's a very strong argument, just without really getting into it, or maybe we do a different stream one night ranking villains, because I think that's one of the fun things to talk about. Martin Landau's performance is easily one of the best in season 1 or 2 as far as the killer is concerned in my book. And I think it's probably the strongest out of all the episodes in season 2. And I was curious, even though we just talked about this episode, thinking about my pattern of how I'm ranking it, a lot has to do with the strength of the bad guy. What's your take on how strong his performance is?
Which one?
Martin Landau, just compared to everybody else in season 2.
That's the joke, because he's playing too.
Well, you got me. Ha ha. Good on you.
No, I really think that his performance is really strong. That is one of the things. In either personality, it doesn't matter. He comes just shining through. I think he gives even the best a run for their money. Who do we have? Cassidy last season, and he was so freaking good. And Martin Landau is right up there next to him. I think that is a fair statement. Yeah.
All right. So before we talk about it in 1 episode, let's review them. I'll put them in here in chat so people watching on a replay can get a list of them. So for you, your picks worst to first. At number 8 for you is which one?
Greenhouse Jungle.
Greenhouse Jungle. 7 is. Whoops.
7 is The Most Crucial Game. Then we go to another game. It's
I'm typing real time. 6 is
The Most Dangerous Match.
Match or game?
Number 7 is The Most Crucial Game.
Right. Most Dangerous Match.
Most Dangerous Match.
Got it. And 5 is
Requiem for a Falling Star.
4 was
Etude in Black.
3
Dagger of the Mind.
2
Double Shock.
All right, so I'll put mine in here, and then we'll talk about what we think is the best episode. All right, so dang it, I've got fat fingers tonight, sir. After that Washington Dallas debacle, I'm just beside myself. So for me, number 8 was Most Dangerous Match. That one.
The most dangerous. No, you're right. Most Dangerous Match.
Requiem is at number 7 for me.
Yes.
Number 6, I've got Greenhouse. And then I kind of want to look at these patterns before we talk about the final episode here as we do it. So, and then 4 would be, of course, etude, which is, weird that we have that in the same position, because we both consider it a good solid episode, or even pretty darn good, however you want to talk about it. The most crucial game is the football one, because number 2 for me, which I have not said, I will say this as these two go on. What I just got through asking about Martin Landau and his performance and his strength, I think is really, really important, because it carries a lot of weight literally with me. Using that same pattern, plus some of the other things I've talked about too, the strength of the performance, not just of him, but of Falk, and just how strong the character is. I never really can say that in all the episodes of season 2 that I felt threatened by, or even if it was an accidental killing, like the Cream one, and it's laughable, I do want a sense of either dread or seriousness when it comes to some of these killings, kind of sort of, at least in some moment, either in the death or in the guy's struggle as he's losing it, like Robert Culp for two episodes now, 1 and 2 has done a great job of doing. I want there to be some level of intensity to it. So it was a very tough pick for me. I had to think long and hard over a few days for me. But for me, the second best episode in all this happens to be you just kind of talked about a little bit, Double Shock. And Double Shock is so good. It's so tremendous. And I want to give Landau all the respect for it, because it's such a hard pick. But what that ultimately means for me, my number 1 pick, of course, is A Stitch in Crime. And I believe that is yours as well, sir. Is that correct?
Yes. Number 1 is absolutely A Stitch in Crime. This episode has, honestly, you have chemistry between Columbo and Leonard Nimoy here that is just unmatched. You have Grandpa Walton on the bed. He's also one of the latest. He didn't actually die, though, so that's the thing. He is a potential victim, but the main victim is our nurse right at the start, and she has the roommate who's kind of ditzy. But oh no, how could this happen? But this episode is just so good. There's tension between Nimoy and Falk that's just unmatched.
He's a dick
throughout this episode.
He's terrifying. He's that good.
Absolutely. He's so calm, cool, and collected. And Falk he gets to his wit's end. You see Columbo have like an angry outburst and just accuse him right there. And that never happens. It's
not going to lie, when he does, because I know I talked about it, I kind of popped a little bit of a Columbo boner, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes, I do. A Columbone. Yes, I understand, because I did too. It's
I got a little aroused. It was good.
There's an entire shift change in Columbo. He starts the episode and going through the hospital. Oh, he can't look down into the observatory to see the surgery. But during that second one, he absolutely is watching above, because he's just waiting for his moment. And at the end, it's almost perfect. It's almost perfect, except Leonard Nimoy chose to cause a scene at the end and push Columbo aside. And guess what's in there? The stitching. And it is fan-freaking-tastic. It's in the top 5. This is absolutely up there.
It's very solid, man. It's like, look, all kidding aside, Leonard Nimoy's performance is tremendous. He doesn't have to. I always think of like Martin Landau as the guy that you want to have, because he can do anything and you can slide him in, and that's so valuable. But when it comes to giving a singular performance, I just had to give the nod here, because even though it can be a bit more one-dimensional, it's so cold, it's so calculating. It really makes you appreciate how a smart person like him could get away with it. And there's something to be said too, and I don't know if it'll be more of something as Columbo moves on or not, but there's this idea that we've talked about on the Xtreme Movie Show as we review movies from all decades, right? I've done all the Dirty Harry movies with RDV, 80s action films. We've talked about trends in movies. Now things have changed, a little bit of television. There's this idea in the 60s and 70s as culturally things have changed, and I don't think that's really debatable that they have. I'm not saying for better or for worse, but just, aesthetically what's going on in the moral condition of America is that a rich person can get away with things, literally murder, because they have resources that the average person, you and I, don't have. And something about Leonard Nimoy not acting like entitled and spoiled and just being smart and very high performing in his field is a great mask to hide behind, rather than say a spoiled athlete, let's say, or something, right? Or even in the football episode where the younger kid's going to inherit the team, the other guy doesn't like it. Okay, that's cool that those things happen, right? It's a legacy you're going to pass on. But, it's not the dude's fault he's inheriting it. That kind of really wasn't the point of that episode. So to me, what's interesting that this episode did is that for me, I had gotten a little sour on episode 2, and I had come to the realization that, you know what? I just hope we finish strong in the last couple of episodes of season 2, because there was definitely a downshift in the overall quality of Columbo compared to just how spoiled we were on season 1. And I'd come to realize that after seeing dogs and goofy partners and stuff like that. And then you get this episode where Columbo's not shucking and jiving, talking about his wife and bringing in flowers and laughing or shooting pool. He, bangs on a thing. He's pissed at the dude. I'm like, fuck yeah. And then honestly, I was not expecting the fact that even though the nurse was going to get it, I felt sorry for her because I knew it was going to happen. I didn't realize where it would go with her boyfriend supposedly being this Vietnam vet with PTSD, having a great conversation in that zoo that I remember that scene specifically, talking about it with Columbo. And I'm like, man, how did we get here? That really wasn't noticeable at the beginning of the episode. It took us into a direction we're not used to, or we don't get a lot of. But then, and again, I don't know off the top of my head if this is true. This is when we get the killer killing a second person, because remember, he drugs him up and has him like fall down the stairs. You know what I'm saying? And honestly, that would be enough to kind of slot this near the top. But the ending reveal that you started off with the dissolving stitches, where he bumped into Columbo and then Columbo comes in, we can go, oh, that seems kind of silly and blah. No, it was absolutely perfect, because if you weren't watching at the beginning and you saw him change the clock that he had on his desk and you didn't see him bumping the stitching, then that's on you as a viewer that missed it. It's not something that they just conjured out of thin air. It's there for you to see, even if you don't hear it or you're not, paying attention to it. That's what I appreciate about the whole visual element of the show. When that's key to it and you have a chance early on to see it, that's great. And also one more thing, Columbo, we can kind of tell almost from the get-go, knows this is the guy. And it seems like when the stakes are the highest, he knows the earliest on who the killer is. It's not this, well, I'll try this, I'll talk to this person, I'll look for motive, and all those little red herrings that we fill up the spot between A and B when we have it, and then we have the reveal, which make up the entire of an episode. This, we almost watch it from the get-go. How is he going to find out that he's guilty of it? And he doesn't lose his cool. He gets a little annoyed with him. He's equally on par with him. Absolutely fantastic episode. I mean, this one, Stitch and Crime, is so good. But this one, if I had to get rid of all the other episodes in season 2 and live with one to select how good it can be, I have to pick this one, because this really is head and shoulders above the rest because of everything with it. This feels like it's probably on the short list, at least for 2 seasons of Columbo. One of the best episodes, man. And I think this was in position, 6 out of the 8? So I was reduced to us having yucks and goofs and, traveling to London and having little tourists take pictures and stuff and just goofy shit. And then we get this bomb dropped on us. Tremendous. I tell you what, for no matter how Columbo started in season 2, it finished on a strong note the last couple episodes, at least 2 of the 3. For me, this is phenomenal. What say you, sir?
Yeah, I'm just so in love with this episode. And I really, really hope that if we do go into season 3, we have something that can help combat this, because honestly, this is just so great.
A Double Shock is so good too, but
yeah,
it was a tough bit between the two. But again, when I take out the essence of what makes a Columbo episode, there's that element of seriousness in it, and that's why I can understand if people take the Dagger of the Mind episode and not treat it as a real episode, which is my precursor on it too. So everybody's got their lenses and filters to look at, but now that we've done 2 seasons of Columbo, ranking all the episodes, it'll be interesting to see as we continue. It's obviously been pretty popular here on the Xtreme Movie Show. Really been enjoyable, and I think the comment you made earlier is 100% in that even a bad Columbo episode is still fun. There's a warmth to it. I can't explain it. I don't want yucks and goofball stuff. I want a little bit of edgy seriousness that can be there. If I want to watch stuff with laugh tracks, I'll go watch the Brady Bunch or some other sitcom crap that, if that's your thing, you like it, that's fine. Trust me, I've seen plenty of them. But with Columbo, I want to see professionals having to execute, and I'll give the writers a nod here, and the way it's shot is that I felt like effort was put into here to make it really good. Like they were really trying to go out of their way to make things go good. That's why I like to stitch in crime as well too. It felt like it wasn't just like, oh, let's just complete this episode. Maybe we missed a day or two, and we know what we got to do to get one in the can, so to speak. And they didn't have the time to go back and fine tune it or whatever. This really felt like they had time to present the meal on a very nice plate. Yeah, absolutely phenomenal one. Final thoughts for you, sir, on Columbo in general, season 2 or otherwise?
I really do love this show. Columbo is obviously just carried by Peter Falk going around and solving crimes. But when we have great villains like Nimoy and then Martin Landau, we are just feasting on excellence. Makes me sad for some shows nowadays, but there are still great episodes that can combat this every now and again, but it's good to go back. It's always good to go back.
Yeah, usually for some of the newer people that reached out to me over the past week or two, we're primarily movies based, and we obviously take suggestions. We have a poll that goes up every Tuesday for movies. We're getting ready to do the Big Sleep Raymond Chandler novel with Humphrey Bogart and Bacall, of course. We'll be talking about that shortly here on another stream, so look for that to get posted momentarily. I'm with RDV on Tuesday nights. We usually do a lot of action movies, 80s stuff. We do a lot of different things. He's a 90s kid, so we've got, like I say, 3 generations here, 80s, 90s, and actually, you being a young 20-something, man, I don't know if we're going to get a fourth in here, but want to thank everybody that's paid attention and listened. I gave a shout out at the beginning of the stream here tonight about the Columbo File blog. I think that's just a great resource. It's very fun. I'm really shocked by how much I've enjoyed Columbo for 2 seasons now. Normally, I've got my tastes and they are what they are, and I'm willing to give things a try, but part of why we do what we do here on Xtreme Movie Show is because, if we find something we enjoy in current times, we'll talk about that too, but there's always something to watch and something to review, and Columbo is so good. It's so simple, and you understand it. It really, really works. I'm looking forward to getting into season 3 as we continue here too. So, Professor Pixel, I'd like to thank you for, of course, joining me again tonight and reviewing this. Looking forward to continuing that. Everybody have a good Thanksgiving week. I don't see from you, and whatever it is you do or don't do, enjoy it. As always, stay extreme. Good night now.
This was not a Dan Curtis production, but it was still damn good.
Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Oh, and one more thing. Bye!